Hello there, how are you doing? Good to see you and hope you are keeping well. I am in a slightly different room here today at the office, so you've got a bit of a view behind me of Hong Kong. And I must say, Hong Kong is unusually cold. It's normally far too humid here and far too hot, but it is actually chilly. Chilly meaning in Hong Kong probably about 14, 15 degrees, which is why I'm wearing this fine tweed jacket complete with patches, so I can probably be a geography teacher or a history teacher, as well as giving you a bit of news and a bit of chat on technology. Now, I'm actually here to talk about ransomware, but before I do that, I want to talk a little bit about social media and people's willingness to jump onto a new platform. So you're probably aware WhatsApp updated its terms and conditions. Facebook, of course, owns WhatsApp, kind of made a few errors in how they dealt with it. I guess they perhaps weren't as clear as they should be with users, and that actually not that much was changing. But users revolted and said, right, that's it, we're all going to move platform. We're going to go and use something else. We're going to move away from WhatsApp and go towards Signal. I've had more people signing up to Signal, and you'll find with Signal, if you don't change your settings, when someone you know who's in your phone book joins, it lets you know more of those than ever before. It's off the chart. But also what's more interesting is the number of people then saying, right, we're going to go and use a different social media platform. In fact, a lot of them are starting to use MeWe, which is a smaller independent platform. And oddly, they there's an option in there to essentially import all your information from Facebook to MeWe. That's all fine. I don't think it will dethrone Facebook by any means, but I just find it odd that people are worried about how their personal information is being used, therefore moving platform, yet still probably using Instagram, which, by the way, is also owned by Facebook, yet nevertheless they're willing to surrender that data to someone else. Something doesn't really make sense. It goes back to what I said many months ago at our technology conference, that perhaps we need to think about how we educate people in how their data is used, how to protect their data and where it goes. But there we go. If you have signed up to MeWe, I certainly haven't, let me know what it's like. I am curious, to put it mildly. At least it's not Parler, which interestingly was taken offline by essentially having internet companies remove its backbone, its infrastructure. And that was a very interesting take on how essentially a non-state-owned entity has so much control over what happens on the internet, which again was something I was talking about a lot last year. Again, interested in what you think on that. I'm watching it play out. As I said, this year is going to be a very interesting one in the world of tech, and a lot of it's going to revolve around our rights to access data and our rights to services that are accessible via the internet. We shall see. But anyway, what I wanted to talk about was something that came out at a talk I was having with our cyber team here just last week, and that was the increase on cyber attacks during COVID-19. Now, you'll probably already know this, I've talked about it before, the number of cyber attacks spiked considerably as COVID-19 hit and more people were working from home. Now, in some ways, if you're working from home, maybe you're a bit more lax, you're an easier target, I don't know, maybe you're not paying as much attention to phishing emails, who knows, but they did go up. Maybe the hackers were working from home as well and had more time on their hands to actually try and make some money through that. Who can say? But what's interesting, those attacks have continued to go up and up. And it's not just the big organizations who are hit. Small, medium enterprises are just as vulnerable, if not more vulnerable. If you think about it, a large enterprise has a much larger IT budget and a better way to essentially make sure that any malware doesn't infect their systems, is caught before it does any damage, than perhaps a smaller entity. But anyway, it's affecting everybody. And the big trend, the thing that scares me the most, is essentially the increase in ransomware. Now, do you know what ransomware is? You probably do, but just in case you don't, here is a sort of ransomware 101. This is where someone gains access to your computer systems, to your hard drive or to your servers or whatever, goes after your data, and then they can do essentially one of two things, but honestly, to be honest, they probably do both these days. They can encrypt that data, make it very hard for you to get at, or they can encrypt it or take a copy of it and transfer it somewhere else. So transfer it off your network onto their own, essentially their own systems. They will then send you via an email or via the app, whatever program they've used to encrypt your files or to steal your files, a note for a ransom saying, if you want to access your data again, you must pay us X amount ransom. Now, this isn't where you then have to put money in a suitcase, drive off to the middle of nowhere and hand it over in the middle of the night. Most often you pay via cryptocurrency, most likely Bitcoin, but other cryptocurrencies are available. You would have to wait and see. The thing is, if you don't pay that ransom, they say you will never get the key to decrypt your data and it will be lost forever. And quite often they give you a time limit for how long you have to essentially provide the money and get the data back. So far, so normal. I mean, ransomware is nothing new. Some of the largest hacking attempts that have hit the news over the last probably 10, 15 years have involved ransomware attacks. And it's normally been encryption of data, and essentially then that data is not accessible. And you hope someone's got a safe backup and they can reinstate the data. And that would often be the sort of advice you might receive from an industry professional. Have you got a backup? You can wipe everything off your systems and start again, but it would be a massive inconvenience and it would cost a business money. So in some cases, people would pay the ransoms. But now, things are getting a bit more sophisticated and it's a two-pronged attack. So what you will normally find now, we've found certainly over the last few months, is that rather than getting a note, your data is encrypted, and if you don't pay the ransom, we will never be able to access it again. It's not only will you not be able to access it again, but also we've got a copy of it and we're going to leak it or sell it or post it on the internet and do something awful with it. So you have a double whammy. You can't access your data. And then if you're in one of the many jurisdictions where data has to be protected and there are penalties for losing data, particularly if it's personal data, financial data, depends on the industry you're in, but there we go. You then have to face, well, not only have I lost the data, but I also face a massive fine from a regulator, client embarrassment if that was confidential information and it's posted online, and potentially the end of a business. Think how severe it could be. Think of something like, the Panama Papers leaks or the Ashley Madison hack, where that data that was essentially taken was so damaging to so many individuals that the people who are holding the data, essentially it was pretty much the end of the road for them in many ways. So we're seeing this double-pronged attack, and the question is, what do you do? Now, me being a technology lawyer would say, well, what you do is make sure you don't get in that position in the first place. Make sure all of your people are carefully trained on cybersecurity. They're not clicking phishing emails. They're not responding to things that look like they might be a bit suspicious. Make sure that your IT team have got everything monitored, that you perhaps are using a third-party company to monitor your systems and alert you if something goes wrong. But that's not always going to work. The fact is, at some point you are going to get hacked, and it's the severity of the hack and how you respond to it that you have to think about. And in a ransomware attack, it has become more sophisticated. Even just from posting videos online, I've seen an increase in people trying to phish me, essentially sending me emails, and they look fairly incongruous. There's a few where I'm like, is this a genuine person who's asking me to respond to them, or is it someone just essentially trying to kick off a spear phishing attempt? If you were genuine and I've ignored you, I apologize, but there we go. I thought you looked a bit suspicious. But it's easy to fall for them, and it's easy essentially to find yourself a victim. So suppose the worst happens. Suppose that you have now found you can't access your data, your business is hemorrhaging cash. There's also then a risk you'll be hit with a fine which could sink the business. What do you do? Now, a lot of the big ransomware players now are incredibly sophisticated outfits. It's not unusual to find an online help desk which will help you pay the ransom and help you with decrypting your data. There's then a question of whether you can trust the actual ransomware, what's the word to describe them? Ransomware committer, I don't know, whatever, the people behind the ransomware attack, whether you can actually trust them to do what they say. Will they release the data? Will they essentially then sort of delete the data once you've actually paid them? You don't know. But these are the questions that get asked. And what is interesting is that it's around 50% of people who suffer a ransomware attack are paying the ransoms. It becomes not a legal decision, perhaps a bit of a moral decision, and it's quite an emotive one. But ultimately, it's going to come down to being an economic business decision. And I'm curious as to what people do. Obviously, if I put on my very self-righteous hat, I'm thinking, well, where is this money going? If you're paying a ransom, are you then just funding further ransomware attacks? And maybe you can afford the business can afford to pay the ransom in this case, but if they then go after, I don't know, a healthcare provider and a hospital gets shut down and they need the money, are you essentially funding crime? But then factor that into the fact that if you don't pay the ransom, you lose all this data and it's publicly exposed. That could be the end of your entire business. All the people who work for you, everything that you've strived to achieve could be gone in one fell swoop. And I'm interested in what people think. I don't have an answer. I think every situation is different, but I'm very curious what people think about the pros and cons of essentially paying a ransom in the event of a ransomware attack. What I'm thinking I might do is we may do some sort of event where I get some people to talk about this and maybe present the two sides. But if there's enough people interested, then we'll go ahead and do it. And do let me know if you are interested and if you'd like to get involved just by replying to below in the comments wherever you're seeing this video. But to go back to where I started, the ultimate defense to any attack of this nature is really to avoid it. So what I really am calling for at the beginning of 2021 is be vigilant. I am expecting that 2020 was pretty bumper, but I think 2021 will be an even more bumper year for cyber attacks. Some of them will be things you can't avoid. There's going to be state actors, something I find massively interesting because it's like spy novels, only now it's like spy novels mixed with cyberpunk. But there will be that, but there will also be people just trying to make money, and it is an industry. Billions of dollars are created, well, not created, but taken as a result of ransomware attacks. And that is funding an entire industry. Think of that compared to some other industries that may not be making anywhere near as much as money during COVID-19 and the whole crisis that's followed. It does make you wonder. It's not going to go away, and you've got to think of ways to target it. Now again, as I said, my preferred way is make sure your IT is up to scratch. There are plenty of third-party providers who will help you do pen testing in your systems, will install security to try and make sure that if something goes wrong, you're essentially covered. You can also take out cyber insurance, which if you've got the correct policy will cover you in the event of a ransomware attack. These are all things to think about. But again, ultimately, try and make sure the thing doesn't happen. But anyway, do let me know what you think. I am very interested in this. I think it's going to be one of my topics for at least the next 6 months of the year that I'll be following and seeing how things develop. In the meantime, let me know if you signed up to another social media platform and which one you went for and why you thought it was much more trustworthy than the one you were currently using, if you were using any at all. And be vigilant and stay safe. I'll be back very soon. In the meantime, take care.